Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Hope you've been enjoying our other episodes. We've been having a great time connecting with veterans here in Washington State, hearing their stories, issues, some of the veteran resources are out there, and support. We've enjoyed hearing from you, and we'd like to hear more from you. Like if you had any ideas of what we should talk about at this podcast, that would be great. So before we get going, so you don't miss any episodes, you can subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any episodes. And as a reminder, everybody, I'm Paul Herrera, U.S. Army veteran, Iraq, Afghanistan veteran, and drill sergeant. It's good to be here today. You know, there's a lot of things going on in the world today. We got Venezuela, we got Iran, a lot of international things that veterans do pay attention about. But there's a lot of things going on locally, and that's what this podcast is going to focus on, is what's happening here, boots on the ground. So as we talk about on our other episodes, we talk about life after serving our country. And one of the themes that come up again and again is veterans continue, they still want to serve, they still want to lead, they still want to keep solving problems, and they want to build something that's tangible, something that matters. Today, we're going to start to crack that nut open on a topic. Veteran entrepreneurship is one of those. It's a huge topic. So this is just one of the conversations of many that we're going to talk about on this show. So today, we have a special guest, Curt Maier, who is a seasoned business advocate. He's been an executive for nearly 40 years. That's a long time in business, and he's highly educated. Notre Dame, is it, Curt? You're Notre Dame?
Yes, it is. Go Irish.
Yeah, he's a nuclear submarine officer. I'd like our listeners to know a little bit more about you. So I guess we'll just start with your military background, your history. We talked about being a submarine officer. That's usually means you were smart. So just go right into it. What branch did you serve in? And some people don't know what submarines are.
Sure, absolutely. Well, going back to my days in high school when I was considering colleges, I was pretty much destined to go to the State University in New Jersey. And I asked my father, what about some Ivy League schools? And he said, well, what about getting a scholarship? And I really wasn't that outstanding of a student to get into Ivy League schools, but he said, look, there is another option, and you seem to like the sea, the ocean, etc. And my father was a sonarman after World War II, so he got his start in the Navy, in the enlisted ranks. And so we took a tour of Annapolis and the Merchant Marine Academy and the Coast Guard Academy, and I put applications in. And at the same time, I noticed there was something called the Navy ROTC program. So I applied at the same time. And interestingly enough, I ended up getting accepted into the Naval Academy, but I
Wow.
got the Navy ROTC scholarship, which enabled me to choose amongst 75 different universities. And so I did have a chance to go to an Ivy League school, but I passed it up and chose Notre Dame just based on a lot of different reasons. And while in Notre Dame and Navy ROTC, part of our training is to expose us to the different parts of the naval service. Those being the Marine Corps, surface warfare, aviation, and submarines. And I was an engineering major. One of
Wow.
my best friends was an aeronautical engineer, and we were destined to be pilots. And that all changed after our junior year when we went to sea for 6 weeks and came back and realized that by getting an engineering degree, we would be eligible to go into the nuclear navy. And back then, this is, in late 1970s when the nuclear industry
Yeah.
was very hot. And we decided that if we went into submarines, our career would be advanced quicker. And even if we decided to leave, there would be an industry for us. So that's how I came to choosing the Naval Nuclear Program, and was selected by Admiral Hyman Rickover, who, for those of you familiar with the nuclear Navy, he's the father of the program and such. So then, after graduation, I went through several schools in advanced nuclear engineering, 6 months operating in a nuclear reactor plant, and then 3 months in submarine school before I got my orders to Pearl Harbor. And
Wow.
I served aboard a fleet ballistic missile submarine, which was physically based in Guam. And we did patrols, strategic patrols off the coast of Russia for typically 2 to 3 months at a time. So
Wow.
that was an interesting assignment because half the time you're at sea, the other half of the time you're back in Pearl Harbor in the off-duty period where you're boning up on training and certifications and such. So
Well,
I got to the nuclear navy based on my confidence that you could advance quicker, and if I decided to leave, I would find myself a position.
so your time in the Navy, how did that shape how you are today? Because I'm sure it has on all of us, but what's your story?
Yeah, absolutely it did. The fundamental basis of how I operate was all formed being a submarine officer. I mean, in the nuclear navy in particular, attention to detail is on steroids. I mean, there are processes to follow, and then there are processes to ensure every I is dotted and T is crossed. So the meticulous attention to detail really has remained with me throughout my entire career. Paying attention to every single
Yeah.
detail, adherence to processes, understanding that you're part of a team. We had 115 people on board, about 15 officers, 100 enlisted guys, and every single one of them was important to the mission. And so we all had to understand our role and execute that in an excellent manner. And what really drove that home was the intense pressure that the nuclear program had on operating submarines. They would constantly be auditing us, having
Sure.
drills at sea, and
Real
grading
important
us and
work.
ensuring that we had that attention to detail.
Well, I mean, we're talking about entrepreneurship. I can only imagine that those qualities, not just being an officer, in a submarine, but anybody who serves in the military gets those fundamental rules of attention to detail, discipline, and all those things transition into good business practices. We'll get more into that a little bit later. But so, what brought you to Washington State, and what keeps you here?
Sure. Well, that's that's going to be a longer conversation, but
Oh, okay.
since you asked, when I left the Navy, I actually left out of Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. We actually were decommissioning our submarine back in the mid
Oh,
'80s, and it was perfect for me because it allowed for a smooth transition because it was based on land. At that time, I decided, I mean, really, there was one alternative in those days when you transition from active duty, and it was to go and find a job.
yeah,
And typically, you'd work for the biggest, baddest company you could. And so I put myself in the hands of an executive recruiter who placed nuclear submarine officers with Fortune 300 companies. And so, after interviewing with a whole bunch of different companies in different industries, I selected a company called Air Products, and I had a nice long career with them. So I got married. I found my wife in Hawaii, left the Navy out of Washington, got married. My first
yeah.
position was in Phoenix. Spent 3 years there, then went to LA, and then went to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which was our corporate headquarters. Spent a couple of years in Malaysia as an expatriate running the gas business there. And then it was back to Allentown, Pennsylvania in a variety of corporate roles where I got my personal background in
Yeah.
mergers and acquisitions and business brokerage and such.
Well,
So the way we
yeah.
came to Washington is that after all of those moves, my wife and I had two daughters. And my wife is a professional, and she was working for a large German cement conglomerate, and they were making an acquisition here in the Seattle area. And during the process of that, she got to know one of the partners at one of the consulting firms who made her aware of a position that was available here in the local area. So we actually came to Washington via my wife's uh,
There you.
position, and which was fine after
Yeah,
trailing me
but
around. And we
but the
were
main
able
thing
to
is
do
that you
that,
had a
Paul.
taste of Washington through your service. So if this was a terrible place, you'd
Yes,
probably like, oh no, we can't go there type thing. Maybe you could have weighed that in, but yeah, your service gave you a taste of this
exactly. I
wonderful
mean,
state. Yeah,
yeah, when she came back home and said, geez, what about this position? I said, well, I didn't hesitate. I said, well, the kids are still young, and the quality of life in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest is bound to be better than Allentown, Pennsylvania.
there you
So
go.
we left, and it was great.
Well, going back a little bit, you talked about transitioning, getting out. You had the education, you had a great career. Um, from your position to the kid who got out after 3 years in an infantry unit, everybody has to transition. So, my question is, what was the biggest challenge for you in the transition? Yes, you got a consultant firm, but I'm sure you were thinking about it years before you got out, or I don't know. Just talk a little bit about that part.
Sure, and as I talk about it, maybe I'll contrast it a little bit with what I see today, because there is a significant difference. When I got out, the biggest challenge I had, I think, was just identifying which company and which industry I wanted to work with. Whereas today, there are several choices for transitioning military folks. I mean, most people have to put food on a table and have to find a job. So that hasn't changed. But
Yeah.
the ability to take advantage of educational programs is there. And the opportunity to consider entrepreneurship is there. I mean, I didn't think about that at all, years ago. It just never came into my mind. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't known to us, and that's what I'm trying to do here in Washington is make veterans aware that entrepreneurship is a serious option that should be considered. And entrepreneurship can come one of two ways. Well, it could come one of three ways. You have an option of starting something from scratch, which I don't recommend for veterans or anyone else, quite frankly. But the other
Yeah.
two options are either to buy an existing business or to buy a franchise. And we'll talk a little bit about the difference of those two and how to get into that later on.
Well, you gave us a little background on your life on getting a job and getting out of there. What should military veterans and those who are about to transition out uh, know about franchiseship? You talked a little bit about that. Some people might not even know what that means. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that franchising is a misunderstood topic. I think when the subject comes up, most people associate franchising solely with the hospitality industry, with the
Yeah.
McDonald's of the world and the Subways, etc. And I have come to find that there are so many business to business and business to consumer models out there that it covers all aspects of our lives. And at the end of the day, a disproportionate share of franchise owners are
Hmm.
veterans.
Yeah.
Think about this, there are 2.5 million veterans that own franchises. That's a huge number. Yeah, but basically, your question was a little bit more about, what is franchising all about? It's
Yeah.
about being in business for yourself, but not by yourself. What you're doing is what I viewed myself as. You're an executor. You're executing a business model, just as you did in the military. Whatever position you had, as you went through the ranks, you executed a position description to get things done. So, franchisors are looking for folks that can execute a business plan. They are not looking for particularly innovative people. They don't want their business model to be tweaked. They want it to be done and done consistently. And so the
Yeah.
real benefit of franchising for veterans is that you don't have to develop a business plan. You can decide where you want to locate this franchise. It could be where you're leaving the military. If you're leaving somewhere in the JBL area or one of the Navy bases, you could look to put that franchise here. If you want to move back to your hometown or make a
Yeah.
decision on a lifestyle call to live somewhere else, you can locate that franchise where you want because you're building it from scratch. And the other good thing about that is that you're not inheriting any issues. And for veterans coming out of the military, if it's your first rodeo,
Hmm.
you want to make sure that you're successful. And so
Yeah.
you may not have the ability to do the proper due diligence of an existing business to ensure that all the employees are going to stay, that the clients will stay, that the supply chain is secure. You don't have to worry about that with the franchise model because you're building it from scratch. The
Yeah.
other benefit is that you're not paying a premium for it as you would a cash flowing existing business. Your investment in a franchise is lower because you're not generating any revenue or profit in the beginning. So you have to have the mindset that it will take some time to develop that cash flow to replace your income that you enjoyed in the military. But typically that's a period of time from 9 months to a year, depends on the business, the franchise that you're in, etc. And of course, that can be financed when you secure loans for that franchise. Your working capital to keep your life going, can be handled and such. And the other thing about it is that once you've built that cash flow over time, you now have a real asset, something
Yeah.
that, can be generational, passed along to your kids, or it could be sold to where you're making a profit and then make some decisions about either investing in something else or
Yeah. Kurt, thank you for
diversifying in another
explaining
way.
that. Some of our veterans out there, have done many different jobs in the military. There, many different military occupational specialties. And some of them can't maybe imagine that what they did in the military, how does that transfer, into entrepreneurship or just any of this stuff? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's probably might be more surprising than we think.
Sure, I think the key point is that if you've worked in a team environment,
Yeah.
you've taken stock of how your leaders have treated you and have led the organizations, and you should be always noting what the good leaders are and the bad leaders are and such, and to be able to lead your team in the manner that you respected in the past is a great opportunity. I mean, it's your team. You're generally building it from scratch, so you're
Yeah.
adding people to a point where you can absorb them and develop them in the proper way, and you're also getting mentorship from the franchisor. They realize that you're new to business in
Yeah.
general. So they're not just teaching you about their franchise, whether it's painting houses, cleaning homes, whatever it may be, but they're giving you that business advice as well, and also helping you with the initial hiring of your employees and such. So again, the key is you're not in it alone. Whereas if
Yeah.
you purchase a business from the get-go, once the transition is done with the owner, you're on your own. So.
One of the things in life is usually the first year of anything new is the hardest. So when it comes to franchises, what does success look like the first year?
Yeah, I would say that success the first year would be where you're actually at the break-even point. So I'll use my own experience as an example. So uh, the way I got into franchising was that after my 20-year career with Air Products that I mentioned,
Yeah.
my wife and I, with the two girls, needed some flexibility in our life. And so I had an opportunity to take an early retirement package, which gave me some capital to buy a business. So my
Yeah.
initial focus was on buying an existing business. I couldn't find anything that I was happy with. I was concerned about too many things. And a friend said, you ought to consider franchising. And so I did. I looked across all industries, staffing, automotive. I did look at hospitality. I ended up buying a senior healthcare franchise. So success
Hmm.
for me in that first year was just to reach break even. I mean, it can
Yeah.
be a bit unnerving to have to hit your credit line every other week to make
Yeah.
payroll. But again, you anticipate this. So you just have to stick with the program and get through that first year. So the first year is tough in that you're
Yeah.
hiring your employees, you're getting your initial clients, and you're getting comfortable with being an owner. But then after that, the
Yeah.
proverbial hockey stick curve takes over. And for me, within only a year and a half, I had replaced the income that I enjoyed in my corporate career. So, it's just a matter of
Yeah.
focusing on the basics that first year, executing the
Hmm.
plan, and you've already validated this in your examination of the franchise over a period of time. So, you're
Yeah.
comfortable with the business model and you execute.
So you mentioned a little bit about that, it's never too late to start. I mean, you could do something and you retire from the military, get out of the military, and you're doing something different for 20 years, like you said, and then you got into it later after you had some capital or something like that. So it's never too late to start something. So my question would be also, how does a veteran figure out, you mentioned a little bit about, searching around like you did. How do they find what best fits for them, their environment? I mean, what's good for Eastern Washington may not be good for the West. How do they chart that path?
Sure, sure. There are a couple of ways to do it. I mean, when I did it, there weren't the resources that are available today that I'll share with you. But here in Washington State, there's a very useful organization called the Veterans Business Outreach
Very good
Council
information.
Committee, and
Hmm.
they're funded by the SBA to promote small business growth, and this particular organization focuses on entrepreneurship for veterans. And so there's a wealth of information and educational courses that are available that can be accessed by folks that are currently in the military as well as veterans, from years gone by. I would recommend
Hmm.
reaching out to what we term franchise consultants or franchise brokers, which I am one. There are only two states in the union that require licensure for franchise brokers and franchise consultants. And that would be Washington State and New York State. I guess because those states are really looking out for the consumer. So they're looking out for the
Hmm.
veteran to make sure that the franchisors in the state, are reputable and can be validated and such. So, there are folks like me and others that
Hmm.
are consultants. They're familiar with franchising. They've been franchisees. They understand what territories would be available in Washington, and their job is to really get to know you, the veteran, and what's important to you, and what your skill set is, and what the right fit would be for you in terms of franchises. I mean, Paul, there are over 5,000 franchise concepts out there, and as an
Wow.
example, the firm that I'm with only represents maybe a tenth of them, which are the blue chip, high
Yeah.
quality franchisors. None of the, you know, we don't want veterans to be guinea pigs and go with firms that have limited numbers of units to validate.
Well, while we have you on here, here's a question with your subject matter expert. There's a lot of different trends and idiosyncrasies in different states. My question is, what is like the specific industries here that are thriving specifically in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking now of the last few veterans that we have placed in different industries, and it's quite varied.
Okay.
We placed a veteran in a fire damage and water damage restoration business.
Okay.
We placed a veteran in a pet grooming and supply business, which is kind of different. Another one chose a plumbing business. So I think the theme is that there are a lot of home services businesses out there. You might call these, boring businesses from that standpoint, but they're recession proof and
Yeah.
they're needed. The franchisor is bringing quality to you in terms of customer service, lead generation, um, system support, and such. So I would
Yeah.
say the trend is along the lines of home services more than anything else. You have a significant number of people going into the senior healthcare market because of the
Correct.
demographics which are changing, and folks need in-home care and such. So there are a number of different franchisors in that space.
Absolutely. Veterans who are listening today and thinking about doing it, they probably have a list of why I shouldn't do it and fears. What's the biggest misconception that you want to clear up about, owning a franchise?
Yeah, I would say that the first question that I ask veterans or anyone about their interest in franchising is to ensure that they realize that it is a structured system. So we're not looking for changes to it. So if you're an entrepreneurial type, if you're thinking of all kinds of different ways to modify products or add services or whatever, then I would say that franchising is not for you. And I would direct you to look at specific businesses and where you can do whatever you want with them or whatever. So the biggest concern would be that you have to be this executor type and not deviate from the process.
Yeah.
But I would also say that the benefit of not inheriting any issues is a significant one.
That's good answer. We've talked about transitioning, talking about franchising, talked about just now, some of the misconceptions and things like that. Okay, so they got through all that. Now it's to take that first step off the left foot, of course, and that's funding. Where and how? What's that first step? Where do they go for funding for their great idea to get their dream
Yeah, I
going?
think that's one of the problems that we have with encouraging veterans to become entrepreneurs is that they have this misconception that they can't afford it.
Yeah.
And, to be sure, they may not have that much saved up for their initial down payment, but one of the real benefits to veterans are the SBA loan programs that are
Okay.
available to them. And these are important because you can buy a franchise. A typical franchise investment might be 250, 300, $400,000, something in that range. But the veteran would only need to come up with between maybe 10 and 20% of that with liquid funds. The rest of it would be funded through an SBA loan at very
Yep.
favorable rates. Oh, one other plus about franchises is that the franchisors typically will offer a significant veterans discount on the franchise
I
fee.
was going to ask that.
So
Okay.
franchise fees could represent 35 to $50,000 of that initial investment, and typically I see franchisors giving anywhere from a 10 to 50% discount on that
Wow.
franchise fee to attract veterans. But the major source of funding for veterans going into franchising would be SBA loans.
Wow. So, okay, we talked about the funding now. So, what would be their first step of moving forward on, you know, what they should get going
Yeah,
to try to do some entrepreneurship?
I think that the first step would be to engage a franchise consultant, franchise broker, and let me be
You
clear that
mentioned that,
there's
yeah.
no cost associated with working with a franchise broker because the compensation for that broker comes from the franchisors that are looking for good franchisees. So there is absolutely no reason whatsoever why veterans shouldn't approach a consultant who's been there and done that, and then let that
Where do you
consultant.
find those people? Where do you find a franchise consultant? Is it like a person who knows all the businesses, or it's a franchise consultant for one franchise? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Good question. Because what you don't want to do is, as an individual, you don't want to hunt around and approach franchisors independently. It's much more efficient to have somebody represent you in making those introductions and identifying the right fits for you. So it's a matter of finding the right consultant. As an
Yeah,
example, in our firm, we sell both businesses and franchises. So reaching out to someone like me would be the entree into this
yeah,
process where we would then, identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, et cetera, and then actually share specific franchises with you and get your reaction on it. See what resonates with you,
sure.
and when it does, then we would make the introduction to the franchisor And the franchisor would share all the rest of the minute detail about their business model and enable that veteran to do validation, to speak to other franchise owners in the system and get comfortable with the numbers that are being shared, et cetera, to kind of confirm what the
Yeah.
franchise consultant and the franchisor are telling them. And so, time frame, the time that it typically takes for somebody to identify a franchise and end up signing a franchise agreement and getting into it is relatively a short period of time. It can
Yeah.
be 2 to 3 months,
Okay.
depending on if you have the time to work on this on a full time basis.
Well, Kurt, the op tempo in the military right now, Iraq, Afghanistan, has gone way down from what it was, these last 20 years. So there may be time in the military to actually plan ahead, and there's some probably highly organized folks who are active duty right now who are thinking about, they got 5 years, they got 3 years till they're getting out. What advice would you give that active duty person who's ready to get out? How can they prepare the way as to make it a better, smooth transition into that? So, because they might have time to do that now.
Well, yeah, I think the most important thing for them to do is to start to develop a network. I mean, as you get into civilian life, it's not so much, what you know, but who you know. And so while you're on active duty, one of the good things that has occurred over the years is that there has been the implementation of what is called the Transition Assistance Program, which did not exist when I left the military. So there is a program, formalized program that will introduce you to what your options are. When they touch on entrepreneurship, though, unfortunately, they kind of gloss over what we're talking about here, the franchise option. And so I would recommend that they reach out to the VBOC, which is run by the
Hmm.
Small Business Administration, and you can get a list of franchise consultants there, and I'm sure my contact information will be at the end of this
Yeah.
presentation. I would be more than happy to link up any transitioning veteran or any veteran from years gone by that would like to, investigate this process.
Well, it's good to have you talking today. I mean, there's a lot of information. Um, you know, if veterans listening today could take one action after hearing your stories today, what would it be? You talked about contacting you, but I mean, is there anything else?
Yeah, I would say this: do not discount entrepreneurship as an option.
Okay, yeah,
Again, it didn't come into my head until I had served, 20 years in a corporate role. But companies, I mean, we just, look at the layoffs at Amazon, Microsoft, any major company. There really is no security there. So, if you really want to control your life, you ought to at least give entrepreneurship a hard look. And
yeah.
so that means, reaching out to somebody on finding out whether or not franchising is a viable option for them.
That's good to know. You know, you've been working in the corporate world for a long time, and I'm sure you've worked with veterans. You're a veteran yourself. What is the corporate? This is a little addition to this episode. What is the kind of like the corporate attitude towards veterans? I know some people have said, oh, some veterans are just knuckle dragging. Or they got too many issues. Is that true, or do they really value some of the values that was inculcated in them in the military?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard for me to believe that people would think that there's some kind of traumatic stress syndrome that comes with a
Sure.
veteran, and that there are negatives associated with veterans. I mean, the attention to detail, the ability to execute, to be part of a team, far outweighs any kind of negative
Exactly.
impression that there may be about veterans. I think that the mere fact that franchisors are, all of them that I work with, are more than willing to to look at veterans as being franchisees for them. There isn't any limitation. They wouldn't be offering the discounts for veterans
Right?
unless they felt that there was real benefit there. And I think the proof is in the numbers that there's a disproportionate share of franchises that are owned by veterans out there. So, I mean, I
That's
don't know,
telling.
veterans are 10% or less of the population, but if there are 15% of the franchise community out there, it
Yeah.
shows that the franchisors are very confident with them.
And those are good numbers because what they say, 2% of the population serves. So there you have it right there. Curt, it's been great. But before I let you go, I want to close with a quick rapid fire round. And they'll be funny, but you got to think of it off the top of your head. So the first one is, what was the longest time you went without seeing the sun in that submarine?
My God, I would say I remember this to the day, 101 days. Think about that,
101.
three
Oh,
months.
wow. Okay, best
That
port of
was that
call.
was a long. Oh, I would say Chinhae, South Korea. It's an
Wow.
interesting one.
Okay. Very good. Most underrated place in Washington State.
Well, in my opinion, that would be Walla Walla. I have
Walla
fallen
Walla.
in love with it in terms of the wonderful wine country there and the golf availability.
Awesome. Well, you've lived here long enough in Washington State, so my question will be, what's your favorite sports team?
Oh, for sure, the Seahawks. I am absolutely thrilled with how they're doing and see.
You
Yeah.
passed.
So I will add that in addition to my father being in the Navy, my youngest daughter is on active duty in the Navy as well.
All right, that's great. Well, Curt, we appreciate you coming on with us today. I know you're very busy, and I really I hear your name all the time. When it comes to business entrepreneurship, there's Curt there. There's Curt. There's Curt. So we really feel privileged you coming on the show today, and we thank you very much. So have a good one, and go Seahawks.
Go Hawks!
So as we move forward, we got Andy, who has another resource for us. Andy, welcome. Good to have you
Hey,
back.
good to be back.
Yes.
Yeah, if you've ever thought about starting your own business, maybe turning a skill you learned in the military into something of your own, this next resource is one you're going to want to write down. And actually, the one that Curt was just talking about. Today, we're going to highlight the Veterans Business Outreach Center. This program exists specifically to support members of the military community, including transitioning service members, veterans of all eras, National Guard, reserve members, military spouses, who are all interested in starting, purchasing, or growing a small business. And here's the important part. You don't have to figure it out alone, and this resource is free. The Veterans Business Outreach Center offers free confidential coaching and training designed to walk alongside you from the earliest idea all the way through launching and even scaling your business. So what does that look like? You can get help becoming loan ready, including training on what lenders, the banks, are really looking for and how to prepare a strong funding package. They'll guide you through the feasibility analysis, basically helping you ask the right questions before you invest your time and money into an idea. If you've ever heard the term like lean canvas or a business model, thought, I have no idea what that means. They've got you covered there too. You can work one-on-one with a coach to build financial projections, understand your funding options, and create a comprehensive business plan, including everything from legal structure, marketing analysis, all the way to strategic planning and long-term growth. And if you need expertise beyond that, the VBOC connects you with a trusted network of resource partners who can support additional business needs. At the end of the day, their mission is simple: increase veteran-owned businesses, create jobs, strengthen the long-term success of those businesses. Getting started is easy. Just visit their website. We'll put that link in the show notes and register for coaching. Once you do, you'll be connected with a team member who can help take you to that next step. Honestly, sounds like a great program if you're looking to get out of the corporate world and maybe start your own business.
Yeah.
And it's free. A lot of these programs, I've seen a couple, predatory programs in my time, but this is legitimate. This is what you should be using if you're trying to start your own business.
That first step is tough, and it sounds like this can help you get going. I wonder if there's anybody in our audience who's ever used that website. If so, you can comment and let us know if you've ever used it before.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That takes us right into Voices from the Field. Uh, So in our Voices of the Field segment, we like to spotlight veterans across the state so we can better get to know the more than 500,000 of us who call Washington home. Over the last few weeks, we've been sharing stories from vets who gathered at the VFW Midwinter Conference down in Tacoma. We've heard some stories about what matters to them, their tips, their favorite stories. But now, audience, we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your veterans groups. We want to hear about your chats, your meetups. We want to know, do you have clubs? Do you go bowling? Do you throw darts? Let us know. Go to www.waveterans.org and tell us. We're going to continue to show up at veterans events, but this is a great way for you to share. There's also a rotating question available for any of you in the state to record your own response. You can also record your own report of veterans events happening in the area. Maybe a recap of a service project meeting or a vets gathering.
Well, that's good stuff because I got one coming up too. I'd love to share with everyone. It's called the GWAT 100. It's going to go hiking you're going to try to hike or walk or run 100 miles from February 1st, I think, until March. So that's something that maybe people will know if voices in the field. Who knows? And now we're at Action of the Week. We want to do the knife hand and do the Action of the Week since we're in the thick of the legislation session. Our action of the week is to find a bill that matters to you and either comment on a bill or register your support on that bill. And to do that, you can go to ledge.wa.gov and have your voice be heard. Legislators actually pay attention to this, and it's one way that your veteran voice is heard during this legislation session. Maybe you feel strongly about proposed property tax exemption bill that we just covered, or you may really support another piece of legislation we've covered in our podcast. So the main thing is make your veteran voice heard. You can also visit the Washington Department of Veteran Affairs Legislation Affairs page, which we'll link below and in our show notes. They track a list of legislation that may impact veterans or military families in our state each session. So don't give up. Bills sometimes take many years to pass. I've seen bills take 3 or 4 years. There's one that I'm particularly sensitive to, and because I was in public safety before, is a bill that's in its 4th year of trying to pass, and it's to protect children from being poisoned from fentanyl. We can't give up on that. Many times I've had several people testify that we think it's going to pass this year. So just don't give up as we move forward. So, Andy, I know that you're involved, and you also understand that you just can't give up, and we want to get our voices heard, right?
Oh, yeah, it really is one of those things where you have to stay with it. If the bill doesn't pass, you contact your legislators, say, I want this or I don't want this to pass next year. And
Yep.
yeah, it'll take years sometimes.
And it takes some time to do that. I mean, just to get a hearing sometimes, there's many steps. I think we talked about how many steps there are. So awesome. So if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Again, you can view all episodes on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the resources mentioned in our show notes and our website at www.waveterans.org. So thanks, Andy. Thanks for being here again. And we want to thank our guest today, Curt Maier. So with that, we want to hear from you. If you have any good ideas, know any veteran organizations or resources you should think that we should be spotlighting, let us know. Let us know by sharing it in the comments or sending it to our message on our website, again at www.waveterans.org. So join us next time. Be bold, be courageous. Go Seahawks.